everything bass fishing. Coming to you worldwide from Megaware KeelGuard Studios.
Hello, everybody. Here we are. Man, it's great to have you all back for another episode, as I mentioned. Man, before we get started, go ahead, click that subscribe button on YouTube or on your favorite streaming platform. Make sure you subscribe. We obviously never want you to miss another informative episode right here of BassEdge Radio. Man, episode number 399, this May 1st edition. Man, huge shout out, as always, to Megaware KeelGuard. Obviously, we're always trying to continue to provide anglers with, their favorite boat accessories, particularly the do-it-yourselfer KeelGuard from Megaware. Man, they have so many great products. You can see them all at keelguard.com. Wow. Per usual, crazy springtime action going on here in the bass fishing world. Man, over the last 2 weeks, we have crowned new champions on the Elite Series. Drew Benton over at Lake Murray. Of course, with the MLF Invitationals, we've got Kelly Jordan winning that event at Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. Ben Milliken takes home the BASS Open event out there at Toledo Bend. And Jake Lawrence on Kentucky Lake. Conrad Demikis, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, but he was out there on the California Delta taking the win. And most recently, Brody Campbell absolutely crushed the field by double-digit weight over second place out there at Lake Chickamauga in the MLF Toyota Series events. So, man, it's been a wild time, as always. Very, very interesting way that things come to fruition for these champions, and it's fun to hear about. Currently, as we tape this episode, just a couple days here before May 1, the BASS Elite Series is competing right now on Santee Cooper. Matt Robinson came out of the gate big time there at Lake Murray. Now he's back out of the gate huge after a couple days on Santee, so we'll see how that kind of shakes out. In the MLF Bass Pro Tour, anglers in a special event, the Heavy Hitters event. Pretty cool event, and they pay out a ton of money on that deal. But that's going on near the city of Monroe. Impoundments Caney Creek and Bussy Break. If you'll remember last spring, they were there very early in the year, caught a lot of huge fish. They're catching some decent fish this year, but definitely we can see that transition. They must be kind of more in that little post-spawny phase. I know they caught a couple of sight fish early in the event, but things seem to be a little bit tougher out there for that tournament. So it'll be fun to see how that breaks down. Randy Howe going into the lead in the championship round, and Dakota Ebert too. I mean, that guy's catching them everywhere he goes. He's sitting in second place heading into that championship round. So it'll be fun to watch that over these next couple days. We'll see those winners as this podcast air on the 1st of May. Let's see, man, a few highlights. I love to mention out of these events, things that I'm learning, hopefully things that you can also take away from these events. In the last podcast, we mentioned the Lake Murray BASS Elite Series event and how we could learn from the MLF Bass Pro Tour event that took place just a few weeks prior. That event took place the first week of April. I think it was the 2nd through the 5th, somewhere in that ballpark. But the Elite Series event happened April 20th through about the 23rd. And being able to see kind of the transition of how the events took place. Are the bass behavior patterns moving really fast? Are they moving slow? What can we learn about spawning bass, about the herring spawn, about fish guarding fry, these types of things? If you remember in the MLF event, there were several anglers that felt like the spawning fish were concluding and they were running out of them. What was neat to see is you saw a new wave came to the banks in this Elite Series event several weeks later. And actually Drew Benton, who won the event, concentrated on sight fish the first couple days. Then he kind of transitioned into more of a herring spawn and that type of pattern as the event progressed. But and it's really neat to see how, on a particular lake, the phases of bass behavior continue to evolve. Especially through the springtime when most of us are out there on the water. I mean, it is the time to catch big fish throughout the country as the spring progresses, whether you're in Texas, where I'm at Lake Amistad, or New York's still a little bit chilly, but I see a bunch of my friends getting on the water up there. But they can also learn from this and see how through the south to the north, this whole spring behavior pattern progresses. And it's really cool to see also with the shad spawn and the herring spawn and several lakes with this fry garter situation. But we're going to talk more about that here in a minute. The forward-facing sonar continues to be just a giant killer, and some neat things I've seen this week or the last couple weeks. Number one, probably the coolest thing I saw was Tyler Rivette with the BASS Elite Series on Lake Murray. He was catching fry garters on forward-facing sonar. He would see the ball of fry garters in 5-6 feet and be able to target those fry, and then he would catch the bass that was guarding those fry. Man, that was probably one of the neatest things I saw over the last couple weeks. But we also had an angler, Jake Lawrence, at the Kentucky Lake Toyota Series event, and he dialed in spawning smallmouth with his forward-facing sonar. So that was pretty amazing too. And the cool thing is he is going to be here with us later on in this episode as our featured angler. So we're going to hear a lot from Jake Lawrence today and how he was able to become the champion of the MLF Toyota Series there on Kentucky Lake. And it's just really unreal how technology continues to evolve through anglers learning how to capitalize on the potential that forward-facing sonar technology provides them. I'd be adverse, man, if I didn't give a quick shout out to obviously Kelly Jordan winning that MLF Invitational, Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma, and also Drew Benton. Both of their wins come from behind wins on the final day. Kelly was back almost 6 pounds to Ron Nelson, who was leading that event. And then, of course, Drew Benton, I believe he was in 10th place going into the final day, down about 5 pounds at Lake Murray in that Elite Series event. And both of those come out on top as champions. And for me as a competitor, it's refreshing to be reminded that you're kind of never out of an event. As long as you're in the event, whether it's day 1, 2, 3, 4, however long that tournament is, man, if you have faith, kind of believe in that process, it's possible to make some things happen. And man, from a competitive standpoint, that is always super, super positive. So I tell you what, we're going to get ready here. We're going to get right into the meat of this episode, our showcase segment. A friend of mine, Rick Harris from Texas Hill Country Hammer, obviously a successful MLF Toyota Pro and a guide. We're going to get his perspective on some little things he thinks is super important right here in the showcase section right after this message.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so choose the protection the pros pick. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our patented technology. The Megaware KeelGuard is made tough and made to stick. Install it yourself in less than an hour, providing the most dependable, most trusted protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Insist on the original KeelGuard the pros have picked for 25 years. Megaware KeelGuard. Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within.
All right, welcome back to BassEdge Radio, the showcase segment with my man, Rick Harris. What's up, Mr. Rick? How you doing, buddy? I'm good, man. I'm good. How you been doing?
Been good. Just guiding every day. Just out living the dream.
That's the way to do it, man. Living the dream. So important for all of us here at BassEdge Radio. That's what we're trying to do, is live the dream through a podcast at the moment, outside of fishing, of course. But let's break it down for us, Rick. Man, you've got a great perspective. Little things, right? You've got to deal first before we get into little things, which is going to be, our subject on today's showcase. Let's talk about Hill Country Hammer a little bit, man. I know that you guys are in your chasing the remind me what it's chasing the bite.
Yeah, the bite.
Chasing the bite. So, man, I know that this is a springtime deal for you guys at Hill Country Hammer. Right now, I believe you're at OH Ivy running down some sight fish. How is that going? Man, I've seen some big bass.
Yeah, it's going great. We've been here since about March, and, we got hit with a bunch of cold fronts in March. So the spawn really didn't start for us until about April. So we've been in about 3 weeks now. I think we have 4 or 5 teenagers already. I think maybe 9 or 10 over, 10. So it's been a really good, and we're just, when we do this, it's like a hunt. We're just on these platforms we put on our boats to just strictly go sight fishing for a day or two just after 1 or 2 fish. And it's been fun, man. And it's kind of cool. Early in the show, I heard you talk about fry garters and the stages. And I've noticed since being here for 3 weeks that fry's starting to pop up. There's fry garter. Gizzard shad are starting to come in to spawn. Bluegill are about to stage to spawn. So everything's happening, but there's still fish coming up to spawn.
Very cool. Very cool. So if I'm looking at a possible trip with Hill Country Hammer, I can expect to not maybe do a whole lot of fishing right now, but do a whole lot of looking. What am I looking for to find some of these big bass, and what's the biggest one you've put a client on, or your group has put a client on here in the last couple of weeks?
So to book with us, man, Chase the Bite, we do strictly sight fishing, like I said, just hunting, but we do trips throughout the summer and fall and winter regular fishing. So we still do that too, but we, kind of really focus on a giant bass fishing trip. We call it trophy trip.
Okay.
And, we're just looking out sight fishing, flats, point, just anywhere they would spawn. Actually, lately now they've just been on Main Lake. It's like the flats in the back of pockets aren't happening. So Main Lake has been the deal. And we actually, like 3 days ago, put one of our clients on a 1485.
Ooh, boy.
That's the biggest bass we've ever put in the boat. And it's a really cool story. It's one of our clients that's been with us a long time, Leroy Boss.
Very cool.
His dream was to catch a 13, and he's not kidding, about $250,000 over 25 to 30 years chasing a teenage bass. And he got one with us a few years ago, and he never thought he'd catch another one. He comes out with us again, and he catches a 1485.
Man, that is exciting. I know with all your guiding, man, it's hillcountryhammer.com. Is that the site that people can go up there?
Guidesandoutfitters.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and just hit us up to book a trip.
Very cool. Very cool. I know that being out with your guide clients, you see a lot of things. You see a lot of anglers. You meet a lot of people in all aspects of their fishing experience. Some, more beginner, some, experts, right? That, like this gentleman that was out for, many, many years trying to catch this teener. We were talking the other day, and I thought this would be a really neat subject to kind of get out there for the BassEdge listener population. And that is the little things that you feel like can make a big difference for an angler's success. And some of it is fundamentals. And I'll say a lot of it is fundamentals, but these are all things that you feel like are sometimes ignored by anglers, but if they could just pay attention to a couple of these subject matters, then they'll provide them a better fishing experience. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah,
all right, cool.
Things. It's just little things that you can control to, throughout the day to make your fishing experience better and get more fish in the boat, not lose fish. And it's never, you're always learning this stuff too. It never really, there's nothing in this that's really set in stone. because it changes a little, but the fundamentals are there for sure.
All right. Well, let's run through some of these subjects that you kind of brought up to me the other day that I feel like are some of the important subjects we should kind of let the listeners know in this showcase. First is line knots, hitting single fish versus pulling fish with trebles, and you've got a thought process there. Tell us what it is and what's the important aspect of your hook application.
Yeah, so basically,
excuse me, your line knots in this situation.
Yeah, knots. So I like if I'm flipping or hitting them with braid or a frog or a swim bait and I'm setting the hook hard, I just like a regular polymer. Just meat potatoes polymer. It's not going to break. It can hold that impact, especially with braid polymer 100% of the time. And, it's my confidence knot. It's easy to tie. And if I'm hitting them, I'm tying a polymer.
Okay. So you're sitting over a 10-pounder and 20-pound fluorocarbon. What's your knot preference?
Yeah, polymer.
Straight. Got it. Okay. Just want to make it clear what just braid, but also you're talking about fluoro in those situations. How about pulling fish with trebles? Is that a different knot that you're using? Yeah. And what other kind of knots do you use in your fishing?
Yeah, and it's not just with trebles. If I'm leaning into them with, like a Thunder Cricket or, 1.5 or anything with trebles on them, TBL 930s, Hayabusa makes a great treble hook. But anything with that, top waters, I'm just leaning into them. I tie, it's called a San Diego jammer.
Okay.
It just, you wrap up, wrap down, and pull it. It's not complicated at all. It's an easy, quick knot, and I use that for when I'm leaning into them. If I'm hitting them, I don't use that knot. I'll probably slip and break, but leaning into them, it's great. I've caught, I think, a 12-pounder on a chatterbait on it and stuff like that, so it's good.
All right. Well, as soon as we get off this YouTube podcast, we'll go and look up the San Diego Jam knot. So, all right. Next up, you felt that gear ratio was really, really important as well. Let's talk about the different types of gear ratios you use to have your success out there when you're guiding.
Yeah, gear, I keep it simple. I really do. I don't go super, super high, and I don't go super, super low. I stick to 3, a 6-3 to 1, a 7-5 to 1, a 8 to 1. It's just, if I'm reeling a crankbait or, a swim bait or a spinner bait, I like that 6-3. Gotcha. If I'm, frogging, top water, Thunder Cricket, I like that 7-5 moving. Anything in grass, I like a 7-5.
Cool.
Casting the worm, flipping, anything like that, I like a high speed 8 to 1.
And you like the 8 to 1 in those situations just because you're reeling that slack line?
Yeah, you're keeping up with the bait. You can get the bait in faster for another cast. And usually if they're hitting it slack line or and even if, you're missing a lot of fish because of that, because I've had a situation down at Amstad guiding, I was fishing a swim bait on a 6-3 and they'd hit it so hard I couldn't catch up with them. So I bumped up to a 7-5 and I landed almost every one of them. So that's how critical a gear ratio can be sometimes.
And making those changes, super critical too. That's great information. All right, we're going to go into rod action real quick. Just on this little piece, let's go with rod action. Give us a couple scenarios when you like, kind of more that medium or maybe even a composite versus a medium heavy or heavy action fiberglass.
Yeah, medium and that anything with a little treble hook or a little thin hook, you want a medium action rod. You're not going to bend the hook out. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to penetrate into the fish. So medium heavy is fine. And usually with the medium, you're going to be reel setting and you're just going to reel as fast as you can and lean. Now with a heavy action rod, it's going to be usually a single hook bait and you're going to be trying to break the rod on every hook set. And guiding and doing the kids camp, Kurt Does Pro Bass Camp down at Amstead, I've seen, just the wrong setups and a lot of missed fish because of it. So that's what we're trying to do, and teaching the kids and clients into using the right rod action.
Yeah, I think it's important to even practice those hook sets and understand what the difference is between pulling into them or really crossing their eyes. Like you say, trying to almost break the rod when you set into them, because it's so important to to get that, fish hooked well, or to utilize the right rod action in order to keep the fish pinned, bring it to the boat. So I think those are all great fundamentals that sometimes can go, unnoticed. You tie on a lure or something real quick in an event. It will, if you just take that extra, minute or two to put it on the right rod, the right action, maybe the right line, which we're going to get into here in a minute, it's going to allow an angler to catch more fish. And it can make a difference whether it's a club tournament, a Toyota tournament, or an Elite Series event, right?
Or a guide trip. Like out here on Ivy, when we're bed fishing for these giants, I ask people, can you set the hook good? And they say yes. I'm like, okay, well, I flip my bait out in 30 foot and I let it sink and I give them the rod and I tell them, let me see your hook set. And they got to jack it as hard as they can before we can go fishing. So I know they can set the hook.
Yeah, that's cool to make sure they have that fundamental, because you don't want them to miss that big fish when you guys are chasing, and when they're spending the money to find that big fish too. It's really important. All right, hooks. We're going to go into hooks again real quick on this. You mentioned how a lot of anglers just don't change hooks often enough.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Like, then again, to these bedfish, if I catch a double digit or bigger on a hook, it is done. I put it away. I give it to the client usually.
Right.
Yeah, like we're hitting these fish with big flipping stick braid. That's a giant fish that we really don't catch much. Like, we don't catch 10. Like, nobody catches 10-pounders every day. You know, so I want them to have the most opportunity catching that fish in a brand new hook every day, pretty much. Yeah. And or just throughout the day, you're dragging, a worm and rock or something like that. Your hook gets bent, or the tip gets bent, or just wore out, or you stick a bunch of fish. You catch 50 a day. You need to change that hook out. I had a Toyota event on Rayburn this year, and I was throwing a red eye shad, and I would change my hooks once or twice a day throughout the day of the event, because I felt them, they weren't super sticky, so I change them out just so I have a better opportunity of catching a fish.
Very cool. Great advice. We got two more things left. One is fishing line, and the other is stance. Let's hit fishing line real fast. I know that you generally like to use a little bit heavier equipment in that category than most, but yet at the same time, when you're fishing up north, fishing smallies, you downsize real effectively as well. What's your guideline for the correct fishing line?
Yeah, so if I'm finesse fishing, if there's a spinning rod in my hand, it's usually 6 to 10. 6 pound is very rare for me, but I do it on those calm, slick days. A lot of pressure. That 6 pound really does make a difference. But I usually go 8 to 10, like on a drop shot or a Ned rig. Or the light line, if it's casting, I cast a hair jig up there a lot. And it's really light. So I dumb down to that 6 pound to just get the bait out there.
Gotcha. And
then on just, conventional fishing with a bait caster, it's pretty much about depth. If you want that bait deep, like a, 6XD or 10XD, 12 pounds the deal. If you're cranking, I like 14, kind of from a 1.5 to 2.5 square bill. 14's my go-to. And then I really skip 15 and 16 and 17. I go straight to 18 on
That's what I'm talking about. You like that bigger stuff.
And pretty much everything else, I go to 18 and 20 and 25. I just, if I'm flipping super thick cover, wood, docks, 25 is definitely on my jig or my Texas rig flipping. And then, reeling a thunder cricket or swim bait through grass or wood, it's 18 or 20. I keep it really simple with line.
Very good information. Again, this is probably the most unique thing we talked about the other night. And we both agreed that this is something that's overlooked by a lot of anglers, and that is stance. And how, particularly, you mentioned you like to approach standing on the front of the boat in the trolling motor to make sure you're in a good position to land bass. Tell us some more about that.
Yeah, I see it, a lot of times guiding or with the kids at the camp, they'll be throwing one way and their hips and shoulders are the other way. So if they get a bite, they're setting the hooks with their arm, and, when I set the hook, I use my shoulders, my back, my hips, my legs, to just try to drive that hook. But, a rule of thumb that I like to do if I'm going down a bank and I'm casting to the left side, I'm using my right foot to control the trolling motor.
Okay.
Your stance is there. Your shoulders are squared up with the bait, and then if you're fishing the right side, you're controlling the trolling motor with your left, just so you always have good stance and square up on that fish, like hips and shoulders, and give her the juice. I just see it so many times where big fish are lost because a hook wasn't driven right.
Yeah. Right.
And that's something that we can control. So might as well do the best you can at it.
Absolutely. Fundamentals, control the controllable variables, do what you can to put yourself in the best position to be successful out there on the water. Of course, that's crazy important. Rick, you got any final thoughts? Man, this has been a great showcase segment. Any final thoughts for BassEdge Nation anglers out there? Not only with just, kind of this topic of the little things, but just anything in general. What do you got for us to close out this showcase segment?
Man, I was on BassEdge last year, around this time, and I've been listening to BassEdge since I started fishing. It was like first thing I listened to. I think I've listened to every episode. So being on BassEdge is really cool. I've known you forever.
Absolutely.
And what you're doing, getting the live going on YouTube is really cool. So, you guys are always stepping it up, and, just final thoughts, pretty much. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this and chatting out my guide service, Hill Country Hammers, Guides, and Outfitters. If you want to come catch a giant bass, hit us up, man. It's a trophy trip. It's a big hunt. We're already booking into next year. So dates are going quick.
That's great to hear. Rick, there's a reason why you're on this time of year. Not that you don't catch good bass throughout the year, but, man, y'all catch giants right now, 14-pounder. I know I've seen at least 6 double-digit bass over the last 14 days that you've caught your clients. And those are just the ones I know about on social media that I can just recall immediately. So, man, it's a great system, a great program, a great team effort that you guys have going down there at Hill Country Hammers. We love to hear about how you're doing this. And most importantly, we really like to hear how every weekend angler can use this information, remind them of the fundamentals, keep their game sharp, improve on these little things. Man, y'all stay tuned. We're going to let Rick go, but we're going to be back with MLF Toyota Series champion Jake Lawrence in the featured angler spotlight. BassEdge Radio continues. Rick Harris, thank you very much, brother. Take care.
Thanks, Eric. Later, man.
Come on, man. Let's roll. What the?
To catch the fish, you need to be one with the fish.
With PowerPole shallow water anchors, you'll get the ultimate in precision, power, and control, so you can catch more fish. No face paint or phony fins necessary.
Excessive shock and vibration are 2 leading causes for premature battery failure. Prolong the life of your batteries with the new Megaware Battery Guard. The Battery Guard sits under your battery and absorbs excessive vibration and bounce, reducing G-shock by up to 80%. Great for boats or anywhere shock and vibration can damage a battery. The Battery Guard can easily be trimmed to fit virtually any custom shape or battery size. Save money by protecting your batteries. Spend more time on the water and less on maintenance. Find yours at Megaware.com.
All right, here we are, we're back. And it's time for the Angler Spotlight. This go around, we're with an angler I was able to meet many, many years ago, way back in his college days. Jake Lawrence, an absolute student of the sport. Man, I'm so happy to see his success ×2. He's had it twice, man. He's got a 50-50 record on the MLF tournament organizations. I mean, he entered 4 events. Jake, you've won 2. Won 2 out of 4. Man, appreciate you hanging out with us here on BassEdge Radio.
Dude, what an honor. It's been again, to watch the show forever and to be here. Super cool. So I appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, my brother. Well, you earned it. There's no question about it. You earned it before, and now you've earned it 2 times, and it's going to be fun to chat with you, kind of reminisce a little bit. Man, I remember meeting you. Man, it's been 10 years ago. We had to text back and forth a little bit, kind of jog my memory, probably jog yours a little bit. But you're a little younger than I am, so maybe not quite as much. But, we met out there on the James River in Virginia. We met through a good friend, an old friend, Ben Parker, used to be a BASS Elite Series angler. You were in college. You reminded me, well, I remember that Ray Brazier was staying with us there at the hotel as well. And you reminded me you were one of the first college anglers, one of the first young anglers to ever attend Bethel University on a fishing scholarship. Man, that's been a little while, but 2012. Tell me a little bit about that, brother.
What an opportunity. You know, there had been college fishing for, 3 or 4 years, a number of years, but just at the club level, no one meaning any school had really taken a serious look at, at this from a scholarship level, so to speak, and really incorporating it into their athletic program. And for Bethel to do that here, actually fairly local, within 60 miles of the house here at Bethel University, McKenzie, Tennessee. And to have that opportunity was so cool. I mean, again, and I'm sure we'll get into it. I was very fortunate. A ton of things have led up to where I am now. And but Gary Mason and the staff there at Bethel to give all of us, not just myself, but all of us the opportunity to get an education, obviously, first and foremost. That's what we're there for. But to be able to travel around, fortunately on their dime, and learn, be able to experience new bodies of water and new situations and circumstances that we wouldn't have. It's certainly changed. We've seen the change just over the last 5 or 6 years and what it's done. And I'm certainly a part of that. So it's really, really neat.
Absolutely, man. A pioneer part of that. And shout out to Ray Brazier as well. Ray, I don't think is involved in that anymore. He used to be involved with Charlie Ingram over there at the Fishing University as well. Ray has been all over this fishing industry, and to have him be a part of those early years with you at Bethel, I'm sure was a tremendous asset. And he probably taught you a lot about the industry as well. I know that you guys were close, or you wouldn't have been, kind of close traveling together as well. Is that correct?
Him and Gary Mason both were very, and Kenny Loudon as well, were very interesting. For a lot of people, of course, behind the scenes, always is to make something, kind of that big. And they're, I want to say the first year it was just 3 of us. And I want to say by the second year, there were 19 or 20 of us. So it was very quickly taking hold. And now, my goodness, there's a line waiting. It's the license plates. And of course, I live very fortunate, live just down the road from the marina here. So I kind of make a little pass through there when I'm not on a trip. And it's neat to see wherever everybody's from. And a lot of those guys are going to school over there. So really cool.
Yeah. And you see a lot of great Bethel anglers out there, working to try to make that next step into the Elite Series or the Bass Pro Tour, and a lot of Bethel anglers having success. So it's cool to see. It doesn't surprise me it grew so quickly. Anybody giving out scholarships for fishing, like, dude, I'd have been all over that in a heartbeat. So that's cool to see. When I do some stat review, I remember your win there at Kentucky Lake. I think that win was kind of more mid-lake area around your hometown of Paris.
Correct.
This most recent win up north, we're going to get into that a little bit. But when I do some stat research on Jake Lawrence, outside of, some of that college participation, I know you did really well in a wild card. You fished some of those national championships. You haven't fished a whole lot of MLF or BASS events outside of that. But like I mentioned in the opening, you've won 2 MLF Toyota events. How have you honed your craft through the years since college that's kind of put you in this situation that you've been pretty dang successful at that AAA level?
I appreciate it. It's an ever evolving process, of course, but I've really stayed on the water a ton, although I've not been fishing national scale tournaments, so to speak, your Toyotas and your Bass Opens. I've still been fishing. In fact, I've fished more in the last 5 years than I probably ever have. In fact, outside of someone that lives a little further south than I don't know anyone that has fished more than I have. A tremendous amount of time out there. And really the way, so what I'm doing and what I've been doing for the last couple of years is really dialing people in on their electronics. I'll be more than happy to take someone out and, go chase a smallmouth or go try to catch a big largemouth or even some crappie. But really what I want to do is stay more on the educational side. And really there are so many people out there that have so much invested into these electronics.
Oh, yeah.
And that's great. But until you understand what that is and what it's capable of doing, what it will show you, and in fact, what it is showing you, you really don't have much there. And so I've really found a niche here, kind of in the Tennessee River Valley, so to speak. I travel quite a bit. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of part of my learning process. I've catered kind of do that for that purpose of learning. But that's really what I've done in the last 5 or 6 years is cater to the guys that, whether it be forward facing sonar, side or down imaging. Ben Parker was a huge mentor of mine very early on. I guess I've known him since I was 10 or 11 years old, and we really struck it off. He's several years older than I am. And so it was a really cool, interesting dynamic. I was, always from a little bitty squirt, kind of into this natural talent or ability, I guess I hate to say that, but I've always worked really hard at it. And I guess he saw that in me and was able to take me under his wing and kind of guide me along. And it really got to the point where we were fishing partners, yet we never actually fished in the boat together. Kind of what I alluded to the other night. It was more of a competition of, that was in the kind of the glory days of the side and down imaging. And we would go out in separate boats and more or less kind of see how many schools each one of us found, new schools, new places that we'd never seen them. And so for him to give me that opportunity to kind of follow suit with him and, some of the bait things, the designs and some of that was really, really astronomically, or really helpful and astronomical in my growing days and still am, of course. But
yeah,
it's really to see, what Ben's was able to do there. And I hope that I can take that and kind of run with it, I guess, so to speak.
Sure. I remember, I actually went out with Ben, I remember Ben Parker. He was kind of that early, the ledge fishing, legendary at that time on Kentucky Lake. And he was so good at the electronics and just being able to read shade differences to find hard bottoms. Whether there was maybe a school there or not at that particular moment, you were learning more about just what color differences really showed you on your side scan and down scan for that matter. And I remember you at that time, again, as alluded to before, being a student of the sport and you being able to be mentored by Ben. And so folks that don't know who Ben Parker is, not only from the electronic standpoint, but got to give shout out to him for the nickel spoon that Ben started. That was the giant 12-inch spoon. So Ben's been I don't know about, he's been a part of that ledge fishing culture for many, many years. And very cool, Jake, to see you kind of come through that and probably not only just learn from Ben, but learn with Ben. It sounds like at the same time. So,
obviously I kind of followed, in his shadows there, but so many days we would come in and over dinner, me being a freshman or sophomore in college, we would sit down and learn from each other. And that's really what it's all about. And that's, to me, I enjoy reeling in a bass. I enjoy the bite. I enjoy the fight, the whole process. But to me, when you see me really get excited is when I figure something out, or like last week, when I understand what's going on, at least at that given moment, that's when I get excited. And that's what I'm really there for. That's what I live for. And so be able to do that together. And really we learned a lot together in those couple of years.
Well, what were some of those keys to those early understandings of, how to find fish there on Kentucky Lake? What are maybe some of your highlights or, aha, kind of moments that you can share with our listeners that really set you on to this next level and really, just kind of putting you in position to continue to progress, maybe to even where you are today?
Correct. There's so many, but one, and it's really it's really more about Ben than it was myself, but I was certainly a part of it. But I'll never forget when Ben, I want to say it was the old Humminbird 997 models, when that side imaging had just come out, and he was one of the very first to even own one. But he kind of set out, and Ben is a very one-dimensional. When he gets something on his mind, you better not get in his way. Kind of figure it out, and he said, "I'm going to figure out what these bass look like out here." Until prior to that point, most good ledge fishermen would tie on a deep diving crankbait and triangulate. Even prior to mapping, would triangulate and find these little corners and these little creek ditches. But we would find it by, instead of side imaging, with a deep diving crankbait. One, it's a great reaction bait. It's a great bait to throw in these schools, but you can cover a tremendous amount of water. Not near as much with the big motor idling at 3 or 4 miles an hour, but back in those days, that was the best way to do it. So we had that way of doing it, but he really wanted to take it a step further. And I remember being so deflated for a week or 10 days coming in and not catching anything. You just can't figure out, idle over a big blob of something, he turned around and throw in it. Long story short, I'll never forget, we were sitting over dinner one night, and I had I had class the next morning, and he said, "Man, I tell you what," he said, "I'm going to turn this off." He said, "Tomorrow I'm going to go out and I'm going to tie on my BD7, and I'm going to go until I catch 3 bass on 3 consecutive casts. And I'm going to put my rod down and idle over it and see what it is." And I'll never forget, he called me about 9:30 that morning. He was so ecstatic, he couldn't even talk. And I don't think that I ever told anybody. My grandparents are actually in the other room here. Probably shouldn't say this, but I actually got up out of class, never said a word, and drove straight up here with no rods, no reels, nothing. I just had to see it. I knew from the sound of his voice that we'd figured it out, or he had, rather. And really from there, that just became an obsession to me. Once I realized that there was more or less an open field out there, there were literally schools on this lake that didn't see a bait until we wanted to throw one in it. I mean, it was cool. And to be on the front end of that, I kind of saw that coming, knew kind of where I was in it. And so I really spent as much time as I could out there. And again, that's the fun thing about fishing, is you never really understand it all the way. You never, just about the time you think you've kind of figured this out, they'll throw you some crazy curveball and you start back square one. So, it's always a learning process, but that was certainly cool to kind of be on the front end of it, kind of ahead of a lot of people there.
Yeah, and that's what we call the sport of bass fishing. So you just came off a wire-to-wire win, actually on the north end, although the north end is the lower end of Kentucky Lake, targeting smallmouth bass, a species not generally nationally known from this impoundment. First off is... let's talk a little bit first about the shape of Kentucky Lake and Barkley Lake. We know that they went into a funk based on the Asian carp invasion several years back. What's the shape of the fishery? And then we'll dive into this tournament experience that you recently had.
Absolutely. Let's kind of back up just a hair and put out that this is just my opinion, and I am certainly not a biologist, a marine biologist, or really know any more than just my personal experiences from spending quite a bit of time out here. What I really feel like happened, this has been several years ago, but we certainly had an overabundance of carp for it. Call it a 4 or 5 period year period. And it put a stress on the ecosystem, and it was not, I don't really want to even say that the carp were the direct cause of kind of the downward cycle. I really feel like it put a point of pressure on the lake where environmentally it was easy for somebody to throw it off. In other words, and it inevitably happened. We had a really mild winter, and in February and March, I guess it was 5 years ago, we had a really, really cold spell there, got single digits, and we had a big shad kill. And it really kind of wiped out the bottom end of the ecosystem. And feel like there's no question that the carp were, I would call it more of an indirect, reason for that, just due to the overabundance, kind of the biomass, so to speak. But the lake since then has really rebounded. It's taken, it probably took 2 years for the shad population there. For a period, we didn't have any gizzards or any threadfin. We had emerald shiners, which is really a kind of a new thing to us here. I guess we've always had them, but not in any abundance, so to speak. Nothing that you would ever target. And it really changed the whole system, the whole chain. And you noticed a lot of the guys, there's not a lot of ledge fishing anymore, at least not right now. Right. I think a lot of fish kind of transitioned over to the bluegill and again, these little emerald shiners, which are still somewhat of a mystery to me, but they're very pelagic, I guess. They're a lot more nomadic. They don't act anything like a threadfin or gizzard. Don't really care what's under them, so to speak. And so it changed the dynamic of the lake. But over the last 2 years, we've really seen the threadfin and the gizzard populations come back. And it's funny to see where we are now. The constant ebb and flow of this lake. It's a tremendously big lake. And the cycle can even happen on one end versus the other. But I'm fortunate enough to be around, I guess, long enough now to see a couple different cycles. And I remember in the late 90s, I was a fairly young kid, but I remember in the late 90s through about 2005 was some of the most incredible smallmouth fishing. It really didn't get talked about. I believe there was one bass mega bucks or something where the jerkbait, the suspending rogue or Smithwick kind of got to be known, but the smallmouth fishing was incredible. Meanwhile, the largemouth fishing had really tapered off. And if you had a 13 or 14 pound bag of largemouth, you had something. So you see this constant ebb and flow. Again, about 2008 is when you saw the largemouth population really do well. You saw the smallmouth really go down, kind of take a back seat. So it's interesting to see. We can't seem to ever get both populations right. really well. But where one always kind of lacks, the other seems to take its place. And right now, at least in the last 20 years, I've never seen anything like this. It's amazing. You can go to any dock, to any brush pile, to any piece of wood. It doesn't seem like it matters where you go, and you'll catch a 12 to 15-inch long smallmouth. So it's really cool to see the lake in the position that it is. And on top of that, we do have, a good up-and-coming largemouth population. It's just we're lacking that 3 to 6 pound class.
Gotcha. Well, being around as well and fishing so many lakes and historical lakes, nationally known fisheries, you see those ups and downs. Some are caused by an invasive species or vegetation decline, or, there's a lot of different reasons why a fishery is going to go through those ebb and flows. We've seen it down here at Amistad when it was just ridiculous, and it got really good again in 2018, 19, and it's still pretty good now, but we haven't seen that crazy boom like we did, in the early 2000s. But eventually, like the stock market or anything else, historically, things come back and regroup. So we're probably going to see that again with Kentucky Lake. It's cool to hear how this is changing. We're going to dive into how this tournament's set up for you, how you became a 2-time Toyota Series champion there on Kentucky Lake in just a moment. But we've got to take a quick moment to thank Bass Pro Shops, a presenting partner of this feature angler spotlight segment of BassEdge Radio. Bass Pro Shops, reminding you we all live downstream. All right, Jake, breaking down for us and understanding the way you took the crown on this Kentucky Lake event just a week ago. Sight fishing for bass you were seeing on your forward-facing sonar. How did the knowledge of this technique for you develop? You had a short practice period. I know you were excited to get the win with this short practice period as well. But give us a little bit of overview on how you developed the pattern that led to the win.
Yeah, so it was really kind of a cool storyline how it all worked out. Again, the tournament was out of Kentucky Dam Marina, which is on the very northern end of the lake, the very lower end, but yet the northern end. And I live here in the Paris area, which is, call it kind of the mid-lake section for the guys that aren't familiar with Kentucky Lake. Roughly a 40 to 50 mile run, somewhere in there. And months prior going into this tournament, I always just kind of assumed that I would run back to this general, call it 20-mile section, and kind of, I know every nook and cranny. And I feel like even when the fishing is tough, I knew when the schedule came out, I knew that this tournament would kind of fall in my favor to some degree, as long as I could still catch them. But I knew it was going to be a fairly tough tournament, with the exception of, TVA having the lake over summer pool. That always helps. But this time of year, generally, you're right in that spawning window, yet we don't have quite enough water to put a lot of cover in the lake. So a lot of them will spawn on offshore cover or just down the gravel banks and in the backs of these little flat gravel pockets, and in places that make it very difficult for us to be able to fish for them. And again, they're just not in that mood where they really want to chase a bait, so it makes it a little difficult. But it really kind of played right in my hands, and I'd always envisioned coming down to the Paris area, but call it 10 or 12 days prior to the tournament, looking at the long range weather forecast, it just didn't look feasible, really. I mean, I know the Floyds, Cole and Steve Floyd did it, a few other guys did, but just looking long term, 2 of the 3 days looked awful for any kind of run, and the third day was an inch and a half of rain, just no wind, fortunately. So I planned to fish at least one day up there, and let's see if we could build a game plan, and kind of really it evolved from the first 20 or 30 minutes being on the lake. It was not something that I had ever done. This live scoping, again, this is what I do most every day, with customers and different people. But as far as the live scoping for spawning bass, I can't say that I've ever done it, but I'm not going to say that I know a tremendous amount about it. It was really kind of a cool way to win, because I was learning as I was going. I would see one on the side of a brush pile and could tell she was spawning, the way she would kind of act and spin around. And I'll never forget the first one I pitched by. I was kind of figuring this whole spawning deal out. And sometimes on a largemouth, if it won't act right, you can kind of bump her and be rough with her a little bit, within reason. And so I thought, well, shoot, I'll try that on smallmouth. But she freaked out and did not like it. And so I said, okay, I won't do that again. Let's not try to hit her. And so it was cool to learn kind of as I went, learn from my mistakes and learn from my successes. And to learn it on that area, I really spent the majority, really the whole tournament from 6880 Bridge to the dam up there, which is not an area that I'm really familiar with. And that's, probably jumping ahead here, but really what made this win so special, the first one was in the summertime. The bass weren't really doing the main river offshore stuff, but I understood what they were doing. And that was I felt like that was 15 years in the making. Like that was my tournament to lose, so to speak. But for this one to do it in a manner that I'm not extremely experienced with, so to speak, and in an area that I don't fish a lot, yet to be close enough to home for the whole family to be a part of it was so cool. It's so special. And I'm sure the next one I win will say is more special than this one, but right now I feel like it's going to be pretty hard to beat.
They're all special, for sure. Whether it's the Thursday nighter or a Toyota Series, Elite Series, they all feel good, right? So congratulations out there for you again. How deep were these fish, Jake? Obviously you're targeting smallmouth, a little forward-facing sonar action. What's the general depth that you were finding these fish on the gravel bars and kind of on these main and offshoot pockets with that particular type of cover?
The magic number was 6 feet, but I caught several and weighed several in the tournament in that 4 and 5 range. I weighed several, I don't want to say several, maybe 2 or 3 in that 7 or 8 range, but really 6 was the number. If I could find the right piece of wood in the right place, or generally close to the right place in 6 feet of water, there was going to be a bass on it. It was just a matter of how big. I was catching 25 to 35 a day, but I would have to weed through a lot of, 14 to 16 inches, which again is a very, very good thing and I love to see on the lake. And so it was again, there was a pattern to it, but it was cool to be able to run new water. And there wasn't the pattern was more, I guess, to kind of go into it. With smallmouth, they traditionally like to stay fairly close to deep water, but when they're spawning, they need enough sunlight. So
sure,
you had to have this perfect mix of deep water, really, really close, but kind of a shallow, flat shelf. Whether it was out in the middle of the lake and it'd be a 5-foot flat, or what I eventually kind of worked myself into was more bank oriented. Again, not on the bank, but just kind of a shallow, flat, shelfy bank that would come off and then drop into a secondary creek channel from there. And it just allowed those smallmouth to cruise up and down that secondary. And as they were ready, they would kind of pull up on those little flat, shelfy banks. And whether it be a brush pile, a stump, what was cool is in practice, I only had about 2.5 days of practice. I had a tournament actually on Pickwick the Sunday prior. So I kind of had a short practice. The wind was excruciating all week. I give credit to anybody that stuck it out all week out there. It was a tremendous amount of work just to try to stay productive, that kind of wind. And so I didn't spend a tremendous amount of time live scoping, more or less just enough to kind of know there's some fish doing this. But I actually in practice found more fish and actually schools of fish on rock, whether it be one big, we don't really have natural boulders here. Right. I found one school on an old secondary channel marker. Like I know they do that up north, St. Clair and the Natural Lakes. First time I'd ever seen that here, but little channel swing points and things like that. I was finding little groups of them. And by the time the tournament rolled around and I really started live scoping and picking through these areas, I think a lot of them had scattered out and gotten on these isolated targets and really kind of settled down, squatted, and started their deal. So it was cool how the tournament evolved and really, as well as I do, that's really what it takes to win a multiple day tournament is to kind of, if you're not ahead of them, you're right on kind of the leading edge and you may not even know it at the time. Like I had no idea what was really going on until the tournament kind of developed, but for that to happen, is really what it takes to be where I was, again, kind of that comfort. I didn't know where I was going to get my next bite, but I knew it was going to happen. And I know it happened. So
we hear that all the time from winners, a developing pattern, right? So critical in a, not all the time, but a lot of times we hear about it. I didn't have the best practice, kind of had a few clues, didn't really know what I had found. You hear those slogans or those statements a lot from folks that win multi-day events, particularly. I think maybe a little bit less on one-day events, but generally from a multi-day perspective.
You'll see a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of one-day tournaments, I feel like you can win it off of an area, small. But these, when you start getting into 2 and 3 and even 4-day events, something's going to change. I mean, it's inevitable. Whether it's water level or outside weather conditions, something will change to cause those fish to move. Generally, it seems like when I find, and I feel like this is what holds a lot of people back in tournament fishing and why we always tend to do so well in practice and maybe struggle, or it always seems more difficult in the tournament, is that we're fishing in practice, at least speaking for myself, I'm fishing for what they're doing right then, right at that moment. And you hear that cliche, fishing the moment, all the time, but to kind of reiterate, I feel like that's where and why a lot of practices seem to go a lot better than the tournament, because by the time the tournament rolls around, the weather has changed, the water levels have changed. Right. Something is not current and you're not current with it. Now you're fishing last Thursday's pattern or so it's a hard thing to kind of break loose of. But again, with me guiding and I the way I purposely kind of schedule myself, I'm never on a single lake more than 2 or 3 days at a time. And it keeps me, even though I'm kind of basically bouncing around the same 5 or 6 lakes, I'm always looking for them. I'm always, and it's under the gun. I mean, I've got somebody standing there watching me and go, see what this is all about. So it's really been fun to kind of put myself in that tournament position, going back to, I haven't fished a lot of big national tournaments, but I've really put myself almost every day under the gun, so to speak. And it's really changed me as a fisherman. It's made me so comfortable. I mean, you see a guy like John Cox and he loses a 5-pounder and it's like, dude, he laughs about it.
Right.
It doesn't even bother him. And I've kind of learned that, like maybe certainly not to his caliber by any means, but you just kind of roll with the punches, and every day is going to throw you some opportunities, and it's up to you to capitalize and to see those opportunities and to hopefully kind of expand and run, forward with those. But
right.
To throw a tantrum and all that, it really doesn't help. I certainly had big missed opportunities in this one that would have made it a lot more fun, a lot less stressful on me. But and it's all fun.
A lot of what you say right there really, really makes me think of Jordan Lee, MLF BBT angler. You watch him on live, you see him adjust quickly. You see him when he kind of gets into a rut, how he tries to move around and make those on the water adjustments like you're talking about, being on the gun as a guide, popping around at different lakes. Someone's over your shoulder. Jake, teach me how you're doing this. What is this knowledge you've got here that is so impressive so that I can try to duplicate what you're doing? And that's what you're showing those folks out there. Well, I see Jay Lee do that all the time. So it just kind of sparked my interest. And I think young anglers have a gift in that sense, because they're definitely more open to potential opportunity than an opportunity or something that they saw a day to a week prior to them being out fishing on a particular date.
What about Jay Lee? And maybe he plays it off well. I remember Matt and Jordan back in the college days, and we all had a big time. And actually, I'm not going to get into the story, but one of the most mad I've ever seen my grandmother was right here. And this is the kind of the family lake house up here. And Jordan and Matt were a part of that mess, and it was not pretty. But anyway, to get back to Jordan, I swear the more clueless he pretends to be, the better he catches them. I don't know if that's his act or if but it just seems like he bebops around, and boy, he'll run into him somewhere. You're right. And you see that from a lot of the younger guys. And I don't know if that is just from us. I mean, again, I don't want to say we have more experience, but more experience at a younger age where we tend to be more open-minded and willing to gamble. I feel like at least the older I get, I know the more reserved I seem to, to be, more hesitant I am to make a gutsy call. A lot of these young guys never think twice about it. They never check up and just go do it. And that's really, as well as I do, you really need to be able to fish with confidence. And if you don't feel like you're going to get a bite, you're probably not going to. And so a lot of that is, I don't want to say artificially, manufactured, but to some degree, I think you do fish significantly better with that level of confidence that you don't know where that bite's going to come. You don't know when, but you know it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been a great breakdown of that Kentucky Lake win. One other quick question I think is an important piece of information for listeners to understand is water temperature. How was the water temperature during the event? And if listeners are going out to, their local lake, maybe it's got some smallmouth, they're looking, maybe in some of these areas with their forward-facing sonar, trying to take your experience and duplicate it as oftentimes we all try to do in the world of bass fishing. What was that water temp, and how did you see those fish relating to that and through your experiences out there on the water in Kentucky Lake?
Correct. So we've kind of had an interesting spring here. It's not been overly cold, but we've just had these cool nights for an extended period of time, and it gets warm during the day, and we gain some ground, but we seem to lose it every night. And we've stayed, I want to say about 2 weeks prior to the tournament, the water temperatures got up right around 70, 71. But by the time the tournament had rolled around, it was back in the mid 60s. And even, I want to say the second morning of the tournament, it was in the low 60s. And so I feel like, and again, I'm still learning. I'll be the first to admit, I'm still learning this smallmouth spawning deal here on Kentucky Lake. I've always kind of ignored them once they've gotten to that point. I've always just kind of swapped gears and gone after largemouth. So I don't claim to be any expert when it comes to this, but I feel like there were certainly some spawners or a wave of smallmouth that spawned, call it 3 or 4 weeks ago, when that initial water temperature got up there in the low to mid 60s. And we've almost just kind of had a second wave. And from what I'm hearing, I've been doing trips other places and for crappie and other things, but it's just as good as what it was last week. Like, they're still doing it. It's crazy. It's just more and more fish coming up. But long-term speaking, one thing, a piece of advice, really regardless of the species or regardless of the time of the year, what I like to do with live scope, especially when I'm looking for fish and in practice mode, so to, whether I'm practicing for a tournament or not, it's important, if whether we have 3 hours or 3 days on a lake, we need to get ourselves around them first and foremost. And that's what I really use or utilize forward-facing sonar for. Without getting a bite, I can tell myself whether we're around them or not, and even just life in general. But one thing that I can tell you that has helped me in the last year is to pick up a small little finesse swim bait. Like the one that I was throwing in the tournament's a little I don't know if you can see that, 3.25 booty shaker. There's a ton of little small finesse swim baits out there. It gets a ton of bites. And one thing that's interesting when you're starting with forward-facing sonar is, we've always gone, the Ben Parker motto, bigger, badder, slides and all that. But when you realize that you can put it in a little bitty cube right above his head and fool him, more or less give him an opportunity that he cannot pass up, almost the smaller, the more natural, the better, because again, I'm presenting that bait to the fish. I'm not calling that fish up to my bait. I'm putting it exactly where it needs to be for him to have the most opportune, place to run up there and
feed on it. Sure.
I utilize a small swim bait a tremendous amount. And the reason is everything in the lake will eat it. So even when you see something, you go, I don't know what that is. You oftentimes can flick it over there and still catch it. Identify what species helps you moving down the road. But you can cover a tremendous amount of water. And what I was doing both in practice and in the tournament is I was running the trolling motor up there about a mile, 1.2 to 1.7 miles an hour, until I would either hit a fish or hit a piece of cover and put the brakes on, oftentimes power pole down, and throw that swimmer over it. What was really cool about this tournament, again, I'm still learning, so maybe this is a normal thing, but again, I was out on the main lake, whether it be flats or these main lake kind of shelf flats that come off the bank into that secondary creek channel. But if I threw my tube over there, if I would see a fish or see a piece of cover, a lot of times because they were spawning, you wouldn't see the fish. Be really tight. If it was a bigger stump or a bigger limb, they would actually be sitting on top of it spawning. If it was a smaller, like a post-sized stump, they'd be sitting on the side of it, but you wouldn't see it until you threw your bait at it. Interestingly enough, a lot of those fish wouldn't get excited, wouldn't react to just my tube. I would actually have to throw that swim bait over it, and there were a lot of shad in that area, and I never really felt like I saw any bluegill, and I guess that can attest to this, but I would almost irritate that smallmouth by winding that swim bait over his head, not trying to get it down there to him, but just trying to irritate him, even if it took 3 or 4 or 5 pitches. But you would see that fish from just being a blob sitting there to all of a sudden it would start flickering, it would start flashing, he would start getting excited doing donuts, and that's when I knew if he still wouldn't eat my swim bait, I could flick that little trick tube, that Jinko trick tube in there, and oftentimes catch them. But it was a really cool 1-2 punch. I could cover water with that swim bait, and again with live scoping, it's almost a spot and stalk, and you're only going to have as many opportunities as you give yourself, and to give yourself those opportunities, you've got to cover enough water. And to drag a bait, you oftentimes see guys throw Nikos and little shaky heads and drop shots, and that's a great way to do it once you know that. I just encourage, as you're learning, it's an easy bait to see on the screen. You can chunk and wind. It's not a real hard bait to fish. It's a great way to learn and cover water, and even, again, just find them. Whether it's a different bait that you have to catch them on, you can locate them with that little swim bait.
Man, Jake, that's excellent insight for all the listeners. Appreciate you sharing that little tidbit of knowledge, and it kind of took me back when you were mentioning throwing that that tube in there at first, and the fish would kind of disappear. Doesn't mean they weren't there, as you mentioned, but they just stuck to the bottom, and it kind of brought me back to the Classic at Knoxville earlier this year with Gussie. Gussie using the moping technique over some of those big rocky areas, little shelves, drop-offs, and oftentimes he didn't see the fish until they reacted to that bait. So it kind of relates.
Up and you would see them, but it would take you throwing your bait over them to get them to show themselves. That's a great analogy. That's exactly what was happening.
Sounds like we're on to something. So that's great to hear. Jake, we're going to get ready to kind of close this up a little bit, but man, I really think you've got some important insight to any angler that's looking to kind of take it to the next step. First, you talked a little bit about your guiding, how much that's enabled you to continue to evolve as an angler, hitting a lot of different lakes. Have you been able to hit some national fisheries while you're in this process? And please give your guide service a shout out for folks that want to get in on this knowledge that you're sharing.
Absolutely. The best way to reach me is actually on Facebook. If you'll just message me there at on my personal page. As far as of course Jake Lawrence. As far as traveling, I've really stayed. Man, I've got to get up north. This smallmouth deal is driving me crazy. I've a couple trips planned, it just hadn't worked out. But I've primarily been, from Texas, out Mississippi, Alabama. I just got back actually a couple days before my Pickwick tournament. I was at Chickamauga for a few days. Got to fish over there. So I'm getting to travel around a lot and see a lot of new places. And again, it's allowing for me to provide for my family in a I guess a little safer manner than your traditional tournament touring level. But most importantly, it's allowing me to learn and build through this process. And I feel like that, with some very good things, some very fortunate things have come my way, and things are developing. We'll see what happens in the next couple months, but we may be taking this thing, a little further. I may be out there on the road with you and some of the other guys.
So that's kind of what I wanted to hit on. First, make sure everybody check out Jake Lawrence there on Facebook and find out about the service that he's providing out there. Electronics is going to be an important part of everybody's game, obviously, in the past and moving forward as it continues to evolve as we're listening to right now on BassEdge Radio. But man, as a young angler going to college, as we mentioned before, didn't fish many AAA events. We know there's a cost, as you just mentioned. There's a risk to this whole thing. You're doing things what I would consider a little conservative, which is great. I mean, to be overly risky is probably not smart as a young angler. Although some people can be a little bit more risky than others. Everybody's got a different position. We all know that. But as you mentioned recently about taking this next step, what kind of advice can you give to young anglers watching this podcast, looking up to Jake Lawrence, seeing how he was a part of this pioneering college scholarship situation, really got started 10 years ago in that process, but still making his way to this step that he's ultimately trying to achieve as an angler?
I would say, and again, this is somewhat cliche, but forget the fishing for a minute. This is as much a sales position as it is anything else. And a lot of the younger anglers, maybe we don't, and not so much myself, but you and some of the other guys, maybe we don't do as good of a job as maybe we should in relaying that to them. This is a sales position. There are people that are helping us do this, and by doing that, they're expecting results. They're expecting, numbers to work in their favor. So, first and foremost, obviously, get an education. A marketing degree or some sort of business degree is a great route. It's somewhat of a broad. I learned a tremendous amount, and I actually, fresh out of college, I actually went and sold insurance for a few years. I still got it. I had my my handful of customers that I catered to and I took care of throughout that. But it was a great learning experience, and I honestly, I'm super thankful to have done that. I learned so much from working. I did that for, I guess, 5 or 6 years. Had a lot of fun with it. It just, man, that office gig, to spend the weekend vacation out on the lake and then to show up Monday morning back at the office it got tougher and tougher. And but again, going back to that, I learned so much from that opportunity, and what I saw there, what I experienced there. And so I value the education first and foremost. The fishing side, it's an incredible amount of work. You've really got to have a strong passion. When you say, you eat, sleep, breathe it, my family's got stories for days, all the little goofy, silly things I've done, skipping proms and doing this and that for a $200 jackpot tournament or something crazy. It's you've got to be eaten up with it, because you're going to be able, or rather going to have to make sacrifices, and your family's going to make sacrifices for you. And so, the fishing side, I really feel like is honestly the easy, as long as, you put your head down, spend a tremendous amount of time at it, understand and know going in that you're never going to know it all. There's always going to be the next chapter and something else to learn there, even every day. But really to take the business side of it. And to be honest with you, I'm learning on that side more so than I am the fishing side. I'm not as present as I should be on social media. I stay so busy and stay on the lake, and I've got 2 young boys, and when I get in, shoot, I enjoy time with them, and I need to, ramp myself up on that, and I'm probably going to in the next couple months. So look forward to that in the coming months. But to spend time out on the water and to learn that side of it, but to get a good education and to know that first and foremost, really, this is a sales position, and you're there to sell product, and to hold yourself, to that standard. So
awesome
I look
stuff.
forward to what's coming in the future. It's looking good. I'm excited for it.
Well, Jake, all of us are looking forward to it. Jake, you've been such a great guest here on the show, man. I appreciate you so much taking the time out. Any final closing thoughts before we take a quick break and I come back for a few final thoughts here on BassEdge Radio?
And I want to thank you for the opportunity to have me on here. We've known each other for a long time. We need to get together and boat one day. I'd love to dial your stuff in and see what kind of things we can learn from each other. But man, thank you for the opportunity. And again, the lake here, Kentucky Lake, we've kind of gotten a little bit of a bad reputation, but I want everybody to know that even though this tournament weight-wise, you look on down the list, it really didn't show itself. But, man, this lake is coming on really strong. I mean, I know the smallmouth kind of showed their side of it, but there are a ton of largemouth in this lake. And had we not really landed on that little spawning window where we didn't have any cover to throw at, we would have seen a lot better weights. But I couldn't have asked for it to turn out any better, obviously. And again, anytime that you need anything or anything like that, I'll be more than happy to help you.
Absolutely. It always seems like those TVA lakes, man, they need a little water for those largemouth to get up in there and start spawning. It's like they know. It's like they know. I've seen it a lot on Chickamauga. I've never really been able to fish Kentucky Lake a whole lot in the early spring, but I've been there in June, of course, when we used to go there all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll get together out there, Jake, for sure, man. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone has really enjoyed the knowledge and information as much as I did today on this interview. Y'all stay tuned. We've got some final thoughts here with BassEdge Radio. Jake, thanks again. Take care. We'll see everybody in just a minute. Jake, good luck in your future. We'll keep watching you.
A rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine.
Nitro. Release the champion within.
Nobody wants to run out of power when they're on the water. There is a better way. Introducing the Charge Marine Power Management Station from PowerPole that does the work of 3 devices: a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system. PowerPole Charge.
Hello. Let's get that dual screen out of here. There we go. All right, we're back here on BassEdge Radio. Wow, man, that was deep. We had 2 pretty dang good segments to this episode. Man, Rick Harris coming in for that showcase segment, talking about the little things. Man, a lot of great fundamentals. I think oftentimes some information that we're really taking for granted. Right. So matching all of those different things he talked about, man, the line scenario, the hook scenario, the stance. Man, that's definitely something I see a lot where an angler is not squared up correctly to set the hook properly, or they're fishing out off of a shoulder, or they're just not ready to set the hook and be able to fight and land the fish. So I thought that was some really nice information from Rick Harris, obviously there in that showcase segment. Then, man, Jake, dude, breaking it down for us. He admitted, he's learning. We're all learning this forward-facing sonar deal. And I think the biggest key to that is the developing pattern. And this can happen for an angler at any time. We go back to the intro to the show. We talked about Kelly Jordan winning the MLF at Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. He was down by 6 pounds. We talked about Drew Benton coming out of 10th place to win the Lake Murray Elite Series event. Man, you're never out of it. And if you can just go out there and keep trying to figure it out every day, you can develop into the pattern that's going to make you successful and be able to have a great day of fishing out there. You just got to keep looking at the fundamentals, putting those seasonal behavior pattern, those pieces of the puzzle together, utilizing your electronics, and just becoming more knowledgeable about all of the things on your boat that can help make you successful. Rick again said those controllable variables. So love talking about that, and making sure I implement that into my own bass fishing as well, as you should too. So again, big shout out to Jake Lawrence, man. Let's jump on his social media. Let's watch Jake progress. I don't know how many anglers are 50-50 in Toyota Series events. Fished 4 Toyotas, won 2. It's pretty awesome. And his guide service there looks like it's teaching him over the years as much as it's teaching his clients, because it's an ever-evolving, changing game. I really like the way that he is going to different lakes constantly throughout his guiding process, so that he's always looking at something fresh, which is the same perspective his client is having, or us as anglers are realizing as we go to different lakes, whether fun fishing or tournament fishing, and trying to put that puzzle together. So that's cool to see. I'm gonna tell you what, events coming up in this first part of May until our next episode. We've got the Bassmaster Opens out there. They're going to be on Bugs Island Lake in Virginia. Not a fishery that we've seen on the national scene for many, many years. It used to be a staple back in the 90s, so it's going to be neat to watch that. They've got shad and herring out there, and see how that is going to affect that tournament in the Bassmaster Opens. Can Ben Milliken go back-to-back? Can he go back-to-back top 10s? Actually, it would be back-to-back-to-back top 10. So that'll be fun to watch. MLF Invitationals at Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. Could be a sight fish extravaganza. The cool thing about Lake of the Ozarks there in Missouri is that lake is just chock full of bass. So they're going to rock them and catch them there. You got the Toyota Series Southern Division headed down to Lake Eufaula. Should be a strict offshore deal. That's going to be fun to watch. Could be some bluegill spawning, a little bit of shallow. If you go back to the Elite Series event that happened there several years ago, there was a lot of shallow fish caught, but it'll be fun to watch and see how that thing goes down. Then finally, the Elite Series, after concluding this event at Santee, only have a week or so, I guess it's 2 weeks off, and then they go straight to Lay Lake in Alabama, a site we've seen some classics. We have seen a couple opens there, but I can't remember the last time. Maybe we saw an E50 way back, maybe 2006 or 7, that took place on Lay Lake there in Alabama. A river run system, should be some spotted bass in play, of course some largemouth, so be sure you check into all the AAA and national bass fishing action that's coming up. Gotta remind you before you go, make sure you comment below. Let us know what you like to hear on the show, obviously on our YouTube or your favorite social media streaming platform. Maybe it's iTunes or Podbean, so many places that we're available out there. But we'd love for you to rate the program, tell us what you think, leave us a comment. Thanks again, obviously, to Jake Lawrence, Rick Harris, making this a great episode. Be sure to tune back with BassEdge on our YouTube channel or streaming May 15th. Again, if you hit that subscribe button, you won't miss another great episode here of BassEdge Radio and BassEdge Podcasts, brought to you by, of course, Megaware KeelGuard. And you can shop online at BassEdge.com. You want to get some cool merch. You can see some of the cool merch right here in the background. We got hats and we got some shirts as well. So make sure you take a peek there if you'd like to get some BassEdge Radio swag. But man, thanks again also to Nitro Performance Bass Boats, Power Pole, and of course Bass Pro Shops, bringing you BassEdge Radio. Man, if it wasn't for those folks, we wouldn't be here right now. So happy to have them all involved. Lastly, as my previous co-host Aaron Martin would always say so elegantly, we will see you next time. So long, everybody, from BassEdge Radio. Adios.